I mean, I want you to picture this incredibly specific, highly stressful scenario right now. You are, uh, you're absolutely exhausted.
Oh, I can already feel the tension.
Right. You have been driving for hours through these, winding pitch black mountain roads in Colorado. You are completely off the grid.
Totally isolated.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And you finally pull up to this borrowed remote log cabin. The moonlight is barely cutting through the dense pine trees.
Sounds like the start of a thriller, honestly.
It really does. And because you have a background in private security, you do a standard sweep of the perimeter, just out of pure habit.
Which makes sense, yeah.
So the coast is clear, you punch the code into the keypad, you hear the lock click, you step inside, completely expecting to finally get a peaceful night's sleep. And instead, you trigger a homemade booty trap.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Instantly, you are hit in the face with a freezing, viscous liquid that burns your eyes and smells bizarrely, specifically like your ex-fiance's root touch-up hair dye.
I mean, that is a profoundly disorienting assault on the senses right there.
Yeah.
And it only escalates from there, right?
Oh, it escalates rapidly before you can even wipe the dye from your burning eyes. A literal cloud of baking flour explodes directly into your face.
Just absolute chaos.
Total chaos.
Yeah.
You are choking, you are completely blinded, and suddenly these mechanical robotic voices start screaming, "Intruder!" and "Detonation in 1 minute!" from hidden speakers in all corners of the dark room.
It's like a sensory overload nightmare.
It really is. And then comes the grand finale. A shadowy figure steps out of the darkness and absolutely winds you, hitting you straight in the stomach with a cast iron skillet.
It is a masterpiece of chaos.
Yeah.
Like the ultimate collision of high stakes, life or death paranoia and, well, pure slapstick comedy.
Totally. Now, if you're listening to this, you might be thinking I'm setting up a true crime survival story or maybe breaking down a deleted scene from Home Alone or something.
Right. It definitely has that Home Alone vibe.
It does. But I'm not. This is actually the opening sequence of Faking Cinderella, which is a USA Today best-selling romantic comedy by Pippa Grant.
It's such a brilliant opening.
It really is. But we aren't looking at the source material today just to talk about romance or outline the plot of a rom-com. We are doing a deep dive into the sources behind this universe because buried beneath the flower and the purple hair dye and the physical comedy lies an incredibly accurate psychological blueprint for surviving a toxic family dynamic.
That is the core of what we are unpacking today. We are looking at the mechanics of parental betrayal, the architecture of what we call found family, and the fascinating way humor acts as a psychological Trojan horse for, deeply emotional trauma healing.
Yes, exactly. So whether you are dealing with a crippling case of imposter syndrome right now, or maybe you're navigating a toxic workplace where everyone treats each other like chess pieces, or you're simply trying to figure out who your real allies are in life, this deep dive is going to offer you some very real, surprising insights into taking back your power and reclaiming your own narrative.
I love that. It's so relevant to real-life situations.
It really is. So let's go back to that cabin in Snaggletooth Creek. The man who just got leveled by a piece of kitchen cookware is Race O'Malley. He is a highly trained, highly competent former private security bodyguard.
Right.
And the woman wielding the skillet, that is Margot Merriweather Brown. She is a billionaire corporate heiress who is currently deep undercover pretending to be a broke, struggling housekeeper named Margie Johnson.
The contrasting psychologies in this opening collision are what make it so rich for analysis. I mean, you have two individuals who both firmly believe they are hyper-prepared for danger.
Oh, total.
But they are operating from entirely different paradigms of survival. Let's look at Reese first. His entire worldview is shaped by the private security industry.
He's a professional.
Exactly. He relies on years of professional tactical training. His default state of existence is high alert. When he sweeps the cabin's exterior, he's not doing it because he expects a threat in a sleepy Colorado town.
Right, he's just wired that way.
He does it because hypervigilance is his baseline. He genuinely believes that preparation equals control.
Right, but his preparation completely fails him here. I mean, all of his tactical, high-end security training doesn't save him from getting incapacitated by a woman who doesn't have a single day of combat training in her life.
Because you cannot tactically prepare for sheer, unadulterated paranoia.
Exactly.
Margot's preparation is entirely different. This is the very first night of her entire life where she does not have a professional security detail stationed within 100 yards of her.
Which is wild to think about, like never being truly alone before.
Right. And to understand her mindset, we have to look at the context provided in the source material. Her father recently stripped her sister's security detail away as a form of punishment.
And a punishment. That is so messed up.
It is deeply toxic. So Margot knows exactly what it means to be suddenly, violently unprotected. She is terrified. She is entirely out of her element. So she overcompensates by rigging this absurd trap with string, hair dye, flour, and voice memos on her phone.
It's the ultimate MacGyver setup, born out of a panic attack.
That's a great way to put it.
And the sensory details of Reese's humiliation are so vivid in the text. He's tasting raw flour, his eyes are stinging, he reeks of his ex's hair dye, which, by the way, is a psychological gut punch of its own.
Oh, a massive gut punch.
Yeah, and as he's gasping for air on the floor, his brain just completely short-circuits. His internal monologue is literally just, fuck on a flatbread.
Which is such a funny human reaction to total system failure.
Right. He is utterly, comprehensively defeated. But Margot's reaction is what really caught my attention. She doesn't just feel relief or guilt. The text introduces us to this highly specific feeling she experiences, which she calls grief bacon.
Ah, grief bacon. It's such a brilliant inclusion. She's actually adapting a real psychological and linguistic concept here.
I was hoping you'd unpack this. Where does it come from?
It comes from the German word Kummerspeck. Literally translated, Kummer means grief or sorrow, and speck means bacon or fat.
Okay, so grief fat, or grief bacon.
Exactly. Traditionally, in German, it refers to the weight you gain from emotional eating after a traumatic event or a breakup. It is literally the physical manifestation of your grief.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
But she's not talking about emotional eating here, right? She's using it differently.
She is. She repurposes the concept to describe a specific emotional state. For Margot, grief bacon is the mental weight of her current situation. It's this overwhelming, contradictory cocktail of emotions.
Like a total mental overload.
Right. She is fiercely proud of herself for neutralizing a massive male intruder. She is utterly horrified at the physical carnage she has just inflicted on another human being. And she is simultaneously standing on the razor's edge of a massive panic attack because her reality has just shattered.
All at the same time.
Yes. She calls this feeling grief bacon as a way to categorize the uncategorizable. And for her, this extreme emotional whiplash is just, a standard Friday night.
When I think about the mechanism of what Margot was doing here, like building this elaborate trap, I can't help but draw a direct line to how we experience imposter syndrome in the real world.
Oh, that's an interesting angle. Walk me through that connection. How does a literal booby trap mirror imposter syndrome?
Well, think about the underlying architecture of imposter syndrome. It's not just feeling inadequate.
Right?
It's the behavioral response to that feeling.
Hey, I'm tracking.
When you suffer from imposter syndrome, you build a fortress of completely unnecessary, elaborate protocols because you are fundamentally terrified of being exposed as a fraud.
Yes, the overcompensation.
Exactly. You over-prepare for meetings to a pathological degree. You preemptively tear down your own work before your boss can even see it. You lash out or get defensive when someone asks a simple question.
You're rigging a trap.
Right. You are rigging a metaphorical bucket of hair dye over the door of your career because you assume everyone who walks in is an intruder coming to destroy you.
That is such a powerful analogy.
So, looking at Margot, I have to ask, is her extreme paranoia actually justified by the facts of her situation? Or is she just dragging the toxic pathology of her corporate world into a peaceful mountain cabin?
It's a compelling question, and the psychological reality is that it's actually both. Her paranoia is a direct symptom of her environment.
The environment she grew up in.
Exactly. We are talking about a woman whose father, Tobias Merriweather Brown, is a man who meticulously scrubs his life of anything he deems a liability. He disinherited his own daughter, Margot's sister, Daphne, without a second thought.
Just cut her off completely.
Right. When the authority figure in your life views love and security as conditional transaction-based commodities, it breeds profound paranoia.
You can't ever trust that you're safe.
Never. But we also have to factor in the psychology of physical space. The isolated cabin in Snaggletooth Creek acts as an absolute equalizer. It forces both of them out of their protective shells.
Neither of them have their usual backup.
Exactly. Reese doesn't have his tactical team, his earpiece, or his surveillance monitors. Margot doesn't have her wealth, her status, or her family name. They are stripped of their institutional power, leaving just two highly traumatized people in a dark room.
And that messy, ridiculous physical collision in the entryway perfectly sets the stage for the emotional collision that dominates the rest of the story.
It really does.
Because if we want to understand why a billionaire heiress is hiding out in a borrowed cabin aggressively claiming to be a failed nursing student with a dead single mom, we have to look directly at the ghost she is running from. Margot's overcompensation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's a direct response to a very specific type of upbringing.
Precisely. We are moving from the physical booby trap to the psychological ones. Let's examine the toxic legacies defining both Margot and Rhys. Both of their character arcs are anchored in profound, devastating parental betrayal.
Yeah, the parents in this story are really quite awful.
They are. Let's look at Margot's background at Aurora Gardens, her family's massive hotel conglomerate. She is the vice president of marketing. But her father, Tobias, doesn't view his children as humans. He views them as corporate assets.
Just pieces on a board.
Exactly. Subsidiaries of his own ego. The precipitating trauma of the novel is that Margot's sister, Daphne, refused to marry the right corporate heir.
She basically refused an arranged marriage.
Yes, she refused to merge their businesses through a forced marriage. In response, Tobias coldly and legally executed her from the family. He stripped Daphne of her money, her security, her housing, and her family connection.
It's parental love functioning entirely as a hostage situation, like obey the corporate mandate or cease to exist in my world.
Exactly. And what makes the dynamic between Margot and Rhys so compelling is that Rhys possesses a perfectly mirrored trauma. He didn't grow up in a hotel empire. He grew up in the elite private security world, his family's firm Technique Group.
But he got betrayed too.
He did. His betrayal was orchestrated by his stepfather, Xavier. Xavier wanted complete control of the firm and viewed Rhys as a threat to his succession plan. So Xavier actively set Rhys up to fail.
The mechanics of how we did it are so insidious. I mean, it's really dark.
They are. Xavier assigned Rhys to protect a high-profile, older client named Imogen Carter. Xavier knew exactly what Imogen's behavioral quirks and vulnerabilities were, and he intentionally orchestrated a scenario where Rhys would be compromised and look entirely incompetent.
So it was an inside job.
Completely. It was a manufactured failure designed to give Xavier the justification to fire his own stepson and push him out of the legacy. And the ultimate psychological blow.
Oh, the fiancé.
Right. Right around the same time, Rhys's fiancée, Felice, leaves him for his stepbrother right before their wedding.
The parallel is stunning. Like Tobias views his daughter Daphne as a rebellious asset to be liquidated. Xavier views his stepson Rhys as a business liability to be neutralized.
It's the exact same methodology.
It is. Both Margot and Rhys have been systematically conditioned by their parental figures to believe that their worth is entirely conditional on their utility. If they aren't useful to the bottom line, they are discarded.
Which perfectly explains Margot's current mission. She hasn't run away to Snaggletooth Creek to just take a vacation and clear her head. She is actively running an undercover operation.
She is on a warpath.
She is plotting to dismantle her father's empire from the inside. But the distinction the source material makes here is crucial. Her primary motivation is not revenge. It is justice. She wants to avenge her sister Daphne. She wants to balance the scales.
Okay, I have to push back on Margot's methods here, because this is where I start struggling with her character's choices.
Okay, let's hear it.
She claims she wants justice. She claims her father is this toxic, manipulative monster who plays chess with people's lives. But in order to get the smoking gun she needs to take him down, she decides to manipulate innocent people.
The triplet.
Yes. She takes a DNA test under a fake name, discovers her father has 3 illegitimate sons, the Sullivan triplets, and decides to infiltrate their lives. And she does it by executing this elaborate Cinderella-style lie.
It is a massive deception.
Right. She moves to their town and lies to their faces every single day, claiming to be Margie Johnson, a poor housekeeper with a tragic backstory. She even plants a fake rumor back in New York that she desperately wants her ex-fiancé Oliver back, just to keep her father thinking she's a ruthless shark.
Even though she doesn't actually want Oliver.
Exactly. Oliver is happily dating her sister Daphne, and Margot actually approves of the relationship. She's playing 3D chess with everyone's reality. Isn't she just utilizing the exact same tools of deception and manipulation that her father uses? How can she claim the moral high ground here?
That is the central moral tension of the narrative, and it's a brilliant psychological gray area. The author doesn't let Margot off the hook for this. Throughout the sources, we see Margot actively wrestling with the guilt of her deception.
So she knows it's wrong.
She does. She rationalizes it through 2 lenses. First, she acknowledges she has severe crippling trust issues, which, given her upbringing, is a highly valid trauma response.
Fair enough.
Second, she genuinely believes she is protecting the triplets. In her mind, if Tobias discovers he has 3 illegitimate sons living in Colorado, he won't welcome them. He will view them as a PR nightmare and use his immense wealth to systematically destroy their lives, just like he did to Daphne.
So it's a preemptive strike. She's manipulating them to shield them.
Exactly. She adopts this elaborate, stripped-down persona, losing the designer clothes, the money, the corporate title, partly as camouflage, but psychologically there is a deeper mechanism at play.
What do you mean?
By stripping away everything that gives her power and status, she is testing the waters of unconditional connection. She desperately wants to know if someone can care about her when she has absolutely nothing of financial value to offer.
Oh, wow. That's actually heartbreaking.
It really is. The tragedy, of course, is that building a relationship on a fundamentally unstable foundation of lies inherently threatens the very connection she's trying to forge.
And that leads us directly into the dynamics of the people she is deceiving, the Sullivan triplets. Because Margot thought she could compartmentalize her lies. But the problem with trying to build a found family on a foundation of deception is that the people you are lying to are incredibly perceptive.
And they have their own issues.
Exactly. They carry their own massive emotional baggage. The Sullivan brothers, Decker, Lucky, and Jack, are a fascinating case study in accidental found family and closed-loop ecosystems.
The ecosystem of these 3 brothers is meticulously detailed in the text. You have Decker, who is a grumpy, highly suspicious novelist. He views the world through a lens of skepticism.
He's the cynic.
Right. Then you have Lucky, who is a nurse with literal golden retriever energy. He defaults to trusting people and looking for the good.
The optimist.
Yes. And acting as the fulcrum between them is Jack, a mechanic who operates as the neutral Switzerland of the family, constantly balancing the opposing energies of his brothers.
And the inciting incident for their current crisis is so modern, it's a matched DNA test.
Yes, the DNA test.
They are identical triplets, so
Mhm.
obviously they know they related to each other. They took the mail-in DNA test as a total joke. But the joke detonates their reality when the results come back and reveal that the man who raised them, Mr. Sullivan, has absolutely zero biological connection to them.
It is a profound identity crisis. But what is critical here is how they react to this trauma, especially when contrasted with Margot's family.
The reactions couldn't be more different.
Exactly. When Tobias Merriweather Brown faced a family conflict, he amputated the offending member. He exiled Daphne. But when the Sullivans face this earth-shattering revelation, they do the exact opposite. They close ranks.
They protect each other.
They make a collective decision to bear the immense psychological burden of this biological secret entirely alone. They refuse to tell the man who raised them or their mother because they are fiercely protective of their parents' marriage. They absorb the trauma to protect the family unit.
It's an incredibly noble sacrifice, but looking at it through a psychological lens, that kind of parentification, where the children are managing the emotional reality of the parents, comes with a massive cost.
It's a huge cost.
The text mentions this thing called the triplet curse. It's this local high school superstition they all internalized, which dictates that if one of the brothers falls in love and focuses on an outside relationship, the brotherhood will inherently splinter and fall apart.
They actually believe this superstition.
They do. So, as a trauma response, they have stunted themselves emotionally. They refuse to evolve. In ecology, if you have a completely closed-loop system, it might function perfectly for a while, but eventually it succumbs to entropy. It runs out of oxygen.
That is a phenomenal functional metaphor.
Thanks. They perfectly balance each other, but they are completely stagnant.
They are a closed loop slowly running out of oxygen, and they don't even realize they are suffocating until a disruptor enters the system.
Margot.
Margot's arrival, even disguised as Margie the housekeeper, is the fresh oxygen they desperately need. The text illustrates this disruption beautifully in a seemingly trivial scene, the grocery run for Chex Mix.
Oh, I want to talk about that scene, because on the surface, it's just a funny moment, but underneath, it is doing so much heavy lifting for Margot's character arc.
It really is.
The brothers are trying to figure out who has to go to the store, so they resort to their standard dispute resolution rock, paper, scissors. Apparently, Jack has a genetic failing and always loses.
Poor Jack.
Right. But as they are gearing up to play, Margot just naturally steps up and joins in. She throws her hand in the circle, and in that split second, she drops the entire corporate shark persona. She isn't strategizing a PR campaign. She's just participating in an incredibly mundane, silly sibling squabble.
And it affects her deeply.
She actually gets misty-eyed just being included.
Let's break down the psychology of that reaction. Why does a game of rock, paper, scissors evoke tears from a billionaire executive?
Because it's the contrast. Back in her real life in New York, every interaction is a calculation. Every relationship is a negotiation of leverage.
It's all transactional.
Everything is transactional. Here, in this kitchen, there is zero leverage. It's just a game of chance for a snack run. It is the most profound sense of belonging she has ever experienced.
It's a breakthrough moment for her.
In that moment, she realizes that she didn't just inherit her father's ruthless DNA. She inherited a profound capacity for joy that her parents actively tried to crush out of her. She is discovering her humanity in real time.
And while Margot is infiltrating this brotherhood, experiencing these quiet moments of joy and belonging, she is simultaneously navigating a massive active threat to her entire operation.
Because there is a loose end.
Exactly. Because there is one man in Snaggletooth Creek who isn't fooled by her disguise. One man who knows exactly who she really is.
Which brings us right back to the guy with the purple dye in his beard, Rhys O'Malley. The collision in the cabin wasn't just a physical accident. It set off a ticking clock.
Because he recognizes her?
Yes. Because of his hyper-observant, deeply ingrained bodyguard training, Rhys actually recognizes her. He pieces it together. He remembers seeing her at a high society hoteliers association dinner back in New York.
And specifically, he remembers what she did there.
He remembers her stepping in to protect his older client, Imogen Carter, from the drunken, aggressive behavior of Margot's own father, Tobias.
That memory is a crucial narrative anchor. Before Rhys even confronts her, he already possesses hard evidence that Margot is capable of genuine empathy and protective instincts, even while operating in her toxic corporate environment.
So he knows she's not totally evil?
He knows she isn't just a carbon copy of her father, but his trauma response still dictates his actions. He corners her in a broom closet at the local retreat center, a highly claustrophobic, intense setting, and he essentially attempts to blackmail her.
In a broom closet.
Yes. He demands to know the full truth of what she's doing in Snaggletooth Creek in exchange for his silence.
And Margot, who is practically a CEO in waiting, doesn't crumble. She doesn't cry. She just cold-bloodedly negotiates terms with him in a broom closet.
It is an incredible standoff of competence.
They agree to an uneasy truce, and they end up having to work together at the Spruce Creek Retreat Center. This kicks off the romance arc of this story, and what I find so compelling is how it serves as a masterclass in shifting power dynamics.
The trope of forced proximity is a staple in romantic comedy for a very specific psychological reason. It forces vulnerability by removing the option of avoidance.
You literally can't run away.
Exactly. Initially, Rhys is utilizing Margot as an emotional punching bag. He's projecting all of his unprocessed anger at his manipulative stepbrother, anger at his cheating ex-fiancée, anger at the loss of his legacy at Technique Group, directly onto Margot.
She becomes the symbol of everything he hates.
Right. He looks at her wealth and her deception, and he categorizes her as just another manipulative elite playing games with working-class people's lives. It's cognitive shorthand for him.
But the forced proximity shatters that shorthand. He is forced to actually observe her behavior over time. He watches her interact with the guests at the retreat center.
There are some great examples of this in the source material.
Yeah, like there's an elderly guest, Mrs. Pinsley, who is highly anxious and convinced there are mobsters at the retreat. Margot doesn't dismiss her. She genuinely helps soothe her anxiety.
She shows real care.
And later, there's a massive, chaotic laundry soap disaster, and instead of throwing someone else under the bus, which is exactly what a corporate shark would do, Margot tries to take the blame to protect her coworkers. Her daily actions continually, aggressively contradict Rhys's preconceived assumptions.
And this brings us to the core mechanism of their attraction. Why does a hyper-competent, betrayed private security expert fall in love with the deceptive billionaire heiress?
It's not her money.
It has absolutely zero to do with her wealth or her status. He falls in love with a contradiction. He is utterly captivated by the dissonance between the self-proclaimed ruthless corporate shark she claims to be and the deeply empathetic, protective housekeeper she actually behaves as.
And I want to point out something that I think a lot of romance narratives miss, but this one nails perfectly. Their romance is built almost entirely on the foundation of mutual competence.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just a physical attraction. They profoundly respect each other's tactical, strategic minds. When they're discussing the initial incident at the cabin, Rhys literally admits to having boner-level respect for the sheer ingenuity of her homemade booby trap.
That line is so funny.
He recognizes game. He sees her intelligence and he values it.
That mutual respect is what creates the psychological safety necessary for their ultimate vulnerability. This culminates in a pivotal scene on a ski gondola.
Another small space.
Exactly. They are trapped 30 feet in the air, another instance of inescapable forced proximity. The setting forces the conversation. Reese finally breaks down his walls and confesses the entire deeply humiliating story of his fiancée, Felice, leaving him for his stepbrother right before the wedding, and his stepfather engineering his professional downfall.
And Margot's response here is exactly why they work. She doesn't coddle him. She doesn't offer him empty pity. She looks him dead in the eye and tells him not to be the loser in his own life.
It is a stunning piece of dialogue because it functions as both a challenge and a lifeline.
It really is. Explain the psychology behind that phrase. Why is "don't be the loser in your own life" so effective in that moment?
Because it shifts his locus of control. Reese has been operating from a victim mindset, and to be fair, he was a victim of profound betrayal.
Right, his feelings are valid.
They are valid. But Margot is utilizing a form of cognitive restructuring. She's telling him that while trauma happens and betrayal is a reality, he still retains the absolute power to choose how he writes the next chapter of his story.
He has to take the pen back.
Precisely. If he lets Xavier and Felice dictate his future and happiness, he is actively choosing to lose his own narrative. He cannot let his abusers hold the pen. And what makes her advice so resonant is that it isn't theoretical. It is hard-won wisdom she had to learn after watching her father cut her sister off.
And because they establish this intense bedrock of mutual respect and shared trauma, they're able to lower their shields and actually experience joy with each other. The humor in their dynamic becomes a metric of their intimacy.
They can finally jerk around.
Right. Reese starts calling her Skillet as an affectionate pet name, directly honoring the weapon she used to assault him. It neutralizes the trauma of their meeting. And there is this fantastic scene where Reese's hypermasculine exterior completely cracks.
Oh, the fan fiction scene.
Yes. He accidentally lets it slip that he is highly active on online fan fiction forums, and he is deeply invested in shipping two specific characters. He is genuinely offended that the rest of the forum wants the hero to end up with the princess ghost.
It's a hilarious revelation, but look at how Margot responds. She doesn't mock him. She responds with complete deadpan sincerity, validating his nerdiness by complaining that the princess ghost is annoying and needs to be nicer to the ghosts who smell like toast.
Which is just nonsense, but perfect nonsense.
Exactly. It is an utterly absurd conversation, but psychologically, it proves how incredibly safe they feel with each other. They are sharing these ridiculously niche, unguarded parts of their personalities without fear of judgment.
But even as Margot is falling deeply in love with Riss and successfully integrating into the Sullivan brothers ecosystem, her primary overriding motivation remains unchanged.
Our sister.
Her loyalty to her sister, Daphne, is the engine of the entire plot, which means we need to talk about Daphne, B, and the concept of spite burgers.
The relationship between Margot, Daphne, and Daphne's best friend, B, serves as the emotional anchor and the moral compass of the narrative. When Tobias stripped Daphne of her inheritance and cast her out, he expected her to crumble.
He wanted her to beg.
He expected her to come crawling back, begging for her corporate allowance. But she didn't. She discovered an incredible well of resilience. She moved in with Bay, and they took over a struggling, run-down food truck called the Best Burger Bus, and they completely rebranded it.
They renamed it Spite Burgers.
Spite Burgers.
I love that so much. Honestly, I want to eat there immediately.
Yeah.
But wait, I have a genuine question about the psychology of this. Daphne names her entire livelihood after spite. Isn't building a business purely out of spite, just carrying around toxic emotional baggage in a different container? How is that indicative of healing?
It's a fantastic question, and it speaks to a concept in psychology known as post-traumatic growth. The naming of Spite Burgers isn't about festering anger, it's an act of linguistic reclamation.
Reclamation, okay.
Daphne's taken the absolute worst thing that ever happened to her father's vicious rejection, and she is acknowledging it, stripping it of its power to hurt her, and weaponizing it into something joyful, defiant, and profitable.
So it's like a joke she's in on.
Exactly. It perfectly encapsulates her journey. And for Margot, watching Daphne not just survive, but actively thrive without the Meriwether Brown money fundamentally shatters Margot's worldview. It provides proof of concept that life outside the corporate terrarium is survivable.
It gives her hope.
It makes Margot realize the absolute chilling emptiness of her own life at Aurora Gardens, where every single relationship is transactional.
This realization triggers a massive internal debate for Margot, which brings up one of the deepest themes in the source material, the distinction between justice and revenge.
A very important distinction.
Margot is carrying an immense amount of guilt about her undercover operation. She confesses to Bea and Daphne that she feels like what she's doing to her father is just toxic, petty revenge. She feels like she's sinking to his level.
And how do Bea and Daphne respond to that?
They completely reject her framing. They argue that what Margot is executing isn't revenge at all. It's righting a profound wrong. It is justice.
The distinction they make is vital. Revenge is often characterized by a desire to inflict suffering for personal satisfaction, usually disproportionate to the original harm.
Like slashing someone's tires.
Exactly. Justice is about restoring balance, establishing boundaries, and preventing future harm. Taking down a powerful and narcissistic man who actively destroys people's lives for sport isn't a petty act of vengeance, it's an ethical imperative to stop an abuser.
It's self-defense.
Right. Bea makes the brilliant point that just because society might label an aggressive woman's actions as revenge instead of righteousness, that doesn't make the act any less honorable.
To help Margot navigate this moral ambiguity, Daphne and Bea introduce a decision-making framework that I have honestly not stopped thinking about since I read it. They call it the rocking chair test.
If we extract one highly actionable, real-world tool for you, the listener, from this entire deep dive, it is the rocking chair test.
Okay, let me explain the mechanics of it because it is brilliantly simple. When you are faced with a terrifying, high-stakes, or difficult life choice, you pause.
Okay, you pause.
You mentally project yourself 50 years into the future. You imagine yourself as an old person sitting on a porch in a rocking chair, reflecting on your life. And you ask yourself, will the decision I am about to make right now make a good story to tell my grandkids or my nieces and nephews?
It's all about the story.
Right. If the answer is yes, it will make a great story, then you have to do the scary thing. You make the leap.
Neurologically speaking, what the rocking chair test does is bypass our immediate amygdala-driven fear response. It utilizes a concept called temporal distancing.
Temporal distancing.
Yes. When we are faced with a scary choice, our brain heavily weights the immediate risk, the potential for embarrassment, failure, or pain. By projecting yourself 50 years into the future, you align your decision with your core values and your desire for a meaningful legacy, rather than your immediate desire for safety.
It forces you to look at the big picture.
It is a framework for prioritizing a life lived fully over a life lived safely. Daphne uses it to justify taking massive risks in love and her food truck business. Margot realizes she has to use it to justify blowing up her father's toxic empire. It reframes fear not as a stop sign, but as the entry fee for a life worth living.
It really makes you wonder, if you pause right now and apply the rocking chair test to your current career path or the relationship you are currently in, what choices would you fundamentally alter today?
It forces a brutal but necessary honesty. And speaking of people who radically alter their life paths, we have to examine the evolution of Oliver.
Yes, Oliver is such a fascinating subversion of expectations. In the backstory, Oliver is introduced as a complete corporate pawn. He was Margot's ex-fiancé and he broke up with her years ago.
But not for normal reasons.
Right. He didn't break up with her because he stopped loving her. He did it because his family was facing intense legal and financial issues and he simply couldn't handle the pressure. He folded. He was exactly the kind of weak-willed, easily manipulated heir that Tobias Merriweather-Brown wanted to absorb into his empire.
A total pushover.
But then, Oliver undergoes this incredible metamorphosis. He falls in love with Daphne, and he evolves into this incredibly supportive, fiercely protective partner.
Let's look at how he changes. Oliver was raised to be a proxy, a vessel for his family's corporate ambitions. His original breakup with Margot was a surrender to his programmed role.
He did what he was told.
But witnessing Daphne's post-traumatic growth, seeing someone stripped of everything who refuses to be broken, shatters his conditioning. He literally gives his own corrupt father a black eye to protect Daphne.
Wow, from pawn to protector.
He transitions from being a passive pawn to an active agent of justice, actively working to take down his own family's corrupt business for the greater good.
It's a huge shift.
And from a narrative standpoint, the humor of having this former high society heir acting as Margot's impromptu, deeply bored investigative secretary, digging into the files of Reese's old security firm just because he wants to help, is a phenomenal subversion of the typical billionaire romance trope.
But I want to zero in on Margot's internal reaction to seeing Daphne, Bea, and Oliver form this tight-knit unit. Because when Margot observes Daphne and Bee interacting at the Spiteburger truck, she admits to feeling a sliver in her heart. She feels profound jealousy.
Jealousy, that's so revealing.
She experiences this physical ache because Daphne and Bee have a closer, more trusting bond than she and Daphne do. When I read that, it completely threw me. Up until now, Margot has been this impenetrable, hyper-competent billionaire shark. Why would she be jealous of a food truck owner? How does that vulnerability change our understanding of her character?
It humanizes her completely by exposing the cracks in her armor. Margot has spent her entire life surviving by being the smart one, the capable one, the executive who doesn't need anyone's help.
The lone wolf.
But that fierce independence is actually a trauma response. It's an avoidance strategy. Admitting that she is jealous of her sister's best friendship shows that beneath all the tactical planning and corporate ruthlessness, she is incredibly, desperately lonely.
She just wants a friend.
She doesn't just want to save her sister from Tobias, she wants to be let in. She wants to be a foundational part of the Spiteburger family.
But the tragedy is that all of the secrets she is harboring, her true identity as an heiress, the impending revelation of the triplets' biological paternity, are absolute powder kegs. She's trying to build a family on top of a minefield.
And you know a mine is going to go off.
And eventually, a spark hits the powder. Which brings us to the climax of the story. The ultimate showdown between blood loyalty and chosen bonds.
The tension that has been building since Chapter 1 reaches an absolute boiling point. Despite all of Margot's careful planning, the triplets' mother, Mrs. Sullivan, discovers Margot's real identity.
The gig is up.
And Mrs. Sullivan's reaction is driven by pure, unadulterated maternal terror. She knows the destructive power of the Meriwether Brown Empire. She coldly and publicly kicks Margot out of her home and her son's lives, terrified that if Tobias discovers the triplets exist, he will crush her family.
The fallout is devastating. Margot is standing there, completely stripped bare of all her defenses. The biological family she tried so hard to connect with has aggressively rejected her. And because she genuinely loves them, she realizes she has to walk away to protect them. She feels she truly belongs nowhere.
But this devastating low point is necessary to set up the most incredible, cathartic resolution back in New York City.
The dinner party.
Margot has returned to her toxic reality. She is sitting at a horrific, tense, formal dinner with her parents, preparing to execute her plan and blow up her father's career entirely alone, and who unexpectedly walks through the doors of the dining room.
The Sullivans, the three brothers, Decker, Lucky, and Jack, along with Daphne, Oliver, and Bee, literally crashed Tobias Meriwether Brown's elite dinner party.
Let's break down the psychological victory of this sequence because it is brilliant. The triplets don't just show up to offer moral support. They actively weaponize the very thing that Tobias fears most.
Their very existence.
Exactly, their illegitimate status.
I look at this scene like a corporate hostile takeover. But instead of using stock options and financial leverage, they execute it entirely with emotional leverage.
Oh, that's a perfect way to describe it.
They walk into his stronghold, and they hit the billionaire exactly where he is most vulnerable. His pristine, carefully curated public reputation. They lay out an ultimatum. They demand $50 million each, threatening to go directly to the global press and ruin his immaculate image with a massive scandal unless he immediately retires, steps down from the board, and leaves Margot and Daphne completely alone.
The contrast in this moment is the definitive thesis of our entire deep dive. Look at how Tobias reacts. He looks at these three men standing in his dining room, his own biological flesh and blood, and he feels absolutely no paternal connection.
None at all.
He sees nothing but a PR thread, a corporate liability that needs to be managed or destroyed. But then look at the brothers. They look at Margot, a woman who lied to them, deceived them, and infiltrated their lives for weeks under a false name, and they see a sister worth going to war for.
It proves that DNA does not formulate a family. Their active choice to step into the line of fire, to stand between Margot and her abuser, is the very definition of chosen family.
It is so powerful.
And the execution of this scene by the author is just spectacularly funny. Tobias, panicking, demands his security team remove them. And Lucky, the golden retriever nurse, just steps forward. He looks exactly like a younger, fitter version of Tobias. He proves the undeniable DNA connection without saying a word, just by existing in the room.
That visual is incredible.
And then Decker, the grumpy novelist, looks around this opulent, intimidating billionaire dining room, completely unimpressed, and tells his biological father to lose the moose head mounted on the wall because it's gross.
That specific line perfectly undercuts the manufactured tension of Tobias's wealth. The author seamlessly blends this high-stakes emotional trauma resolution with ridiculous grounding comedy. You have B, Daphne's best friend, standing in a billionaire's formal dining room, threatening to dismantle his empire while rocking bright pink and white striped hair and visible fairy tattoos. It refuses to let the trauma dictate the tone.
Which is the perfect transition to our final section,
Sure.
the Pippa Grant blueprint. Because this blend of absurdity meeting profound heart is the hallmark of her style. And when you look at the author's background, you understand why she writes this way.
Pippa Grant has constructed a massive, interconnected literary universe, including the Small Town Sisterhood and the Copper Valley series. But her personal background informs the psychological depth of her work.
What's the background?
She originally started writing as a form of self-therapy while navigating life as a young military spouse, dealing with the inherent isolation, frequent moves, and high stress of that lifestyle.
That context explains so much about her thematic focus. It explains why her characters are constantly grappling with themes of isolation, the desperate need for found family, and the mechanics of resilience.
It absolutely does.
To illustrate how this blueprint works across her universe, our sources include a sneak peek of another book, The Worst Wedding Date. And the themes in this excerpt beautifully mirror the emotional architecture we just unpacked in Faking Cinderella.
Absolutely. In the sneak peek, we are introduced to Delaney Kingston. She is positioned as the ultimate good girl. She is a bridesmaid burdened with the exhausting task of babysitting the groom's chaotic bad boy brother Theo at a high-stakes destination wedding. And when Delaney finally tracks Theo down, what is he wearing?
He is wearing a giant inflatable ride-on flamingo costume while casually working as an impromptu pool boy. Because in this universe, of course he is.
Exactly. And this isn't just random quirkiness. This is Grant's highly specific, highly effective literary device. She utilizes these absurd, over-the-top visual situations, a man in a giant flamingo costume, a guy with purple dye in his beard, an elaborate flower-based booby trap to deliberately, systematically lower the reader's cognitive defenses.
I want to dig into that because I always wonder if comedy in these heavy stories is just a fun distraction or if it serves a deeper purpose. Like, is the ability to laugh at the absolute absurdity of life like getting hit in the stomach with a cast iron skillet by your future girlfriend?
Right.
Is that actually the coping mechanism these traumatized characters use to survive?
It is absolutely a coping mechanism, and it's rooted in the psychological concept of cognitive reappraisal.
Cognitive reappraisal.
Yes. Humor is not a distraction from the trauma. It is the biological evidence of healing from it. When you encounter an absurd or humorous situation, your brain releases endorphins that physically inhibit the release of cortisol. It interrupts the amygdala's fear response.
So it literally changes your brain chemistry.
Exactly. So when the author makes you laugh at a flamingo suit, your guard drops. And in that moment of lowered defenses, she slips in an incredibly poignant emotional beat, ensuring it hits the reader's empathy centers twice as hard.
We see that cognitive reappraisal happen in the sneak peek. We get access to Delaney's internal monologue. On the outside, she's dealing with a guy in a funny bird suit. But internally, she is crumbling under the crushing pressure to be the perfect friend, to ensure Emma gets the flawless wedding, while completely and unhealthily suppressing her own needs and desires.
She is a pressure cooker.
She's physically twitching with the stress of her own perfectionism. The chaotic, ridiculous energy of Theo's flamingo costume acts as a direct foil, highlighting the suffocating, toxic nature of Delaney's internal state.
And this brings up a broader sociological point about why readers and listeners so deeply crave these interconnected rom-com universes. When the real world feels chaotic, unpredictable, or isolating, returning to a fictional setting like Copper Valley or Snaggletooth Creek provides a reliable parasocial sense of community.
It feels like home.
It offers an ongoing experience of found family. It directly mirrors what the characters themselves are desperately searching for, a safe place where they belong, where their trauma is understood, and where their quirks are celebrated rather than punished. When Daphne jokes about making spite burgers, she has cognitively reappraised her trauma and taken the power away from her father. When Reese and Margot can finally laugh about the flower booby trap, they are actively refusing to be the losers in their own lives. Humor, in this context, is resilience made audible.
That is beautifully summarized. Humor is resilience made audible. All right, let's pull all of these threads together. We have gone on an incredibly deep journey today.
We really have.
We started with a freezing, flower-filled cabin trap in the mountains of Colorado, and we ended with a high society emotional hostage negotiation in a billionaire's dining room in New York City. We have watched a deeply guarded heiress shed her corporate armor and risk everything for connection. We watched a betrayed bodyguard reclaim the pen to his own narrative. And we watched three brothers actively choose loyalty over the toxic legacy of their bloodline.
Ultimately, the mechanics of faking Cinderella provide a masterclass in personal agency. It is a story about the radical act of consciously choosing who gets to occupy space in your life. It proves that family isn't dictated by a DNA test, it's built by the people who show up for you.
The people who step into the line of fire.
Whether that is a grumpy, purple-bearded former bodyguard, three unexpected brothers who use rock, paper, scissors to manage their anxiety, or a sister who brilliantly rebrands her trauma into a highly successful burger bus.
And here's the real actionable takeaway for you listening right now. You do not need a billionaire's bank account to fix your life. You definitely do not need to rig a cast iron skillet to the ceiling to protect yourself.
Please don't do that.
Right, please skip the skillet trap. You just need the courage to stop being the loser in your own life.
You have to define what justice and healing look like for your specific situation, and then you have to actively, aggressively pursue it, even if it requires dismantling the very structures and beliefs you were raised to rely on.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on. Take a hard, honest look at your current life trajectory. Evaluate the job you go to every day, the relationships you are investing your limited energy into, and the secrets or fears you are keeping bottled up. And apply Daphne's rocking chair test.
50 years from now.
Exactly. If you were sitting on a porch in a rocking chair 50 years from now, looking back on the choices you are making today, would you be proud of the story you are living right now? Would it make a good story?
It is a daunting question because it strips away all of our daily excuses, but it is an absolutely necessary one for finding clarity.
If your answer to that question is no, then maybe it's time to rig your own metaphorical booby trap. Maybe it's time to drastically shake things up, drop the heavy armor you've been carrying, and see who is actually willing to stand beside you when the flower finally settles.